First of all, how did you come to work together originally back in '95, I think it was?
I think it was James Jensen who introduced us.
James Jensen being the guy that runs Solidaire Records, which is my record company. And he had heard that Peter White was going off and doing his solo thing. So he thought there might be an opportunity to introduce me to Al and see if we hit it off, which we didn't really, but we decided to work together.
He's always said exactly the same thing.
Well, there you go.
So that, of course, brought us to Between the Wars. Did you originally start working together with a view to making a record, or was it with an idea just to see how well you got on and doing some gigs? How did the record come about?
We weren't making a record. I had this...
he didn't think we were making
I had this riff, which I thought of it, but I couldn't play it. I hummed it to Lawrence and said, "Can you play?" And I had some chords for it. I guess in a way I was thinking of it as an instrumental. I don't know what I was thinking. It was just a riff. And we recorded a demo of the thing with no words, and I took it back. And overnight, I think by the next day, I'd written the words to the Night Train to Munich. And so I went back and I said, "Lawrence, I got some words to this thing." And so he said, "Oh, come around, we'll put them down." So I put a vocal on it, and then we had Night Train to Munich. And I said, "Well, I got this other tune," which became Lindy Comes to Town. And I did the same thing. We made a backing track to that, and I went back to the house, and I came back the next day with the lyrics to it. And so then we had a couple of songs, and I think it was a break for a few weeks or something, and then we made 3 more. And
but by that time, I think we were making an album.
Well, I think I didn't realize we were making a record until we had 5 of these things, and then I suddenly said, "Wait a second, this is beginning to look."
But you kept going around there. You must have thought, "Hang on, this is working. We might have something here."
Well, yeah, I right from the start. The very first thing we did was Night Train to Munich, and
it was productive. That was the thing.
The interesting thing was, like every other person I've ever worked with in my life, you make a demo, and then you go into the studio, and you say, "Okay, we'll do the guitar solo now." And one thing about Lawrence is that the guitar solo he put on the demo went on the record. I mean, Lawrence, and this is, you've done this time and time again, and probably on every record we've made together. What I think of, I'll say, "Oh, just do a casual solo," and Lawrence will pick up a guitar and he'll play the first thing that comes into his mind on one take. 6 months later, you've got a finished thing. Nothing has changed. He never goes back and redoes the solos.
Yeah, if you listen to the demos and compare the demos with the final, and this is true of every record we've done, they're not that different. I mean, they just sound more recordy.
Yeah, lots of it stays though.
In fact, if it wasn't for the fact that he rewrites lyrics, we'd probably keep his demo vocals too.
Yeah, I do. I mean, that's the one thing that changes completely. I mean, on this record, I think there are 12 songs on the new album, and 10 of them are totally rewritten to the extent that, they bear no relationship or to anything that was on the demos. They're about different subjects. I mean, all the words are different. And Lawrence is, he gets used to sort of what I'm singing, and in my mind it's a placeholder. The lyrics are, sort of to be, to be arranged later. So when it comes around to the final vocal, he never knows what's going to come out of my mouth. He just knows it's not going to be what's on the demo.
But it's funny how the things evolve. I mean, like The Loneliest Place on the Map on the new album was nothing like that. Originally.
It was 4-leaf clover.
It was a song called 4-leaf clover, which didn't really make a lot of sense, other than, again, as Al says, it as a placeholder. But the tune kind of evolved, and by the time his lyric was on it, somehow the marriage of the lyric and the music was kind of perfect, but we didn't anticipate doing it that way. It's just kind of following the musical muse of it, and just the way the musicians played it in the studio.
So how much influence do you have on a song then? Once Al brings you one of the famous home demos, how much of it is how much of your stamp is it, you would say?
Well, I'm arranging the stuff, which is, I think, the biggest part of the gig, to be honest, is just taking the raw material. Because Al will walk in with an idea, and it might be on the piano or it might be a guitar thing, and I might say, well, let's try it the other way. Let's, instead of doing it on piano, do it on guitar. The Ear of the Night was one that you came in as a piano piece, and we turned it into a guitar-driven piece. And then, basically our kind of process is that we'll get down the guide part, whatever that is, whether that's a piano or a guitar part, and then I'll have Al put a scratch vocal on, and even if he has no lyrics, I'll just say, I'm going to go put the kettle on, and just write anything, just so that we have a placeholder for it. And then we'll do a very quick arrangement, just some bass and some drums or percussion, and just to get a sense of what it could sound like. And then he goes away and I kind of finesse that. And then my job as a producer, putting on the producer hat rather than the arranger hat, is not to screw around with it. Because once that initial inspiration is there, we don't want to really lose that.
Is this how other people make round? You know lots of people in the industry, right?
I've been in situations, to name no names, where things are, labored, where you do a demo, you maybe do another demo, you record it, then you re-record it, and you kind of work towards getting exactly the right vibe. We just try and start off where it's kind of the core of it is already there, which is why solos don't necessarily change.
Right.
And things don't really change very much.
Could you both just have a quick look at the Between the Walls album and tell us a couple of your favourite tracks, or the tracks that have stayed with you that you particularly like?
Well, I always like Mary and the Chatelaine. Is that on this? I haven't got my glasses.
Yeah, Mary and the Chatelaine.
We always like that one, but it just has a nice feel to it. And I think I probably like most of the things. I always like The Age of Rhythm. I've never done it live because I can't play it. This is something that only
that was one of mine. Yeah, mine. It was actually a tune of mine that Al really liked, and I said, well, there's no way you'll be able to sing it in the key that I play it in. So I kind of rewrote it as a different piece in a key that you could do it. I always like Lindy.
Yeah, Lindy's
cool, and also League of Notions.
I forgot that. Yeah, that's probably the best lyrically.
Yeah.
And so apt because it's all, the League of Notions being about the breakup of the Ottoman Empire and the aftermath. It's all, it's all about making of 1919 is with us today. I mean, the ramifications are in our current lives.
Yes.
So you made Between the Wars, and you did a few British gigs in '95, including Glastonbury. And then in February '96, you did a Dutch tour.
Yes.
Big tour, our biggest European tour for a long, long time. Can you just talk a bit about how you went about turning songs on an album into songs for performance with Al? Or?
We just played them.
I mean, pretty much that record was a simple 2-guitar thing. Yeah. With a little bit of bass and drums on it, but we played the songs exactly the way live that we did on the record. Like Train to Munich, just go out, down.
It was really conceived that way. That was very much a guitar-driven record, and I, unlike some of the later stuff, when we were doing those tunes, very often we'd both play guitar at the same time when we were laying things down, because we were really trying to do it as a guitar-driven thing. Whereas Down in the Cellar, for example, was much more of a piano-driven record and was done, with a different kind of approach. But when we came to doing Between the Wars live, it wasn't a huge transition because it just was conceived that way anyway.
Now, by the time you made Down in the Cellar, you were working together on an occasional basis. Did you pretty much pick up where you'd left off with Between the Wars, or was it recorded in a different way with regard to album?
But the only thing that was different, as I mentioned, was that there was more piano. So we kind of demoed it, and Al played a lot of piano on the demos, and then I had Jim Cox come in, and we started to really kind of tweak the piano parts that way. And so when we went into Capitol to actually cut the tracks with a real piano as opposed to like a synth piano, it was all planned out.
Do you want to talk about some of the songs on?
Well, the one that actually is completely different was when we recorded Soho. It just was us. I don't think we did this on any other thing that we've done, but we both sat on we just had one microphone between us and we just played it completely live.
Yeah.
You know?
That was a different vibe to the rest of the album. We were doing that as kind of that was a Bert Jansch.
Yeah, I don't know what
tribute
we
thing.
Didn't you record that at a different time originally for that tribute album? Or
Yeah,
something?
Yeah, we did,
Yeah,
and
we
it
did.
just seemed to kind of fit on the record anyway.
It was. I think we thought we were making a demo. We just put one microphone there and we just sat down with two guitars.
But it turned out really cool.
But just played it. It sounded so cool that might as well keep it. You know, first of all, it worked for the Bert Jansch tribute, and then we thought, well, it sounds really good. Put it on this. So
Yeah,
we should probably make a whole album that way because it'd be incredibly cheap. Just stick one microphone between us and then just.
Millie
play
Brown,
it.
I've always liked.
I like it. Yeah, no one else likes that. I like that. I think it's good.
well, this was the first album that I actually did like string quartet arrangements for too.
Right.
Because on
Franklin's
Between-
Table, probably.
Yeah, Franklin's Table especially. I really liked the way that turned out. On Between the Wars, we had like some violin and we had some cello, but I remember Andy Powell came and did a string arrangement for Laughing Into 1939, but that was, even then it was more of a kind of a synth-driven thing. But starting with Down in the Cellar, we started to put some real string quartet stuff on this.
And these are the people that you've used several times. This
Not
particular
on
the
Down in the
last two.
Cellar.
Oh,
The Section Quartet, who are on Beach Full of Shells and Sparks of Ancient Light, are a self-contained quartet. But the other one, I just kind of called up a violinist I knew and said, "Can you put a string quartet together for me?"
And this record, I still to this day open every show with House of Clocks, so that
Indeed,
one's
you do.
weathered very well, I think.
Yeah. That one kind of grew on me.
the album.
No, House of Clocks.
Oh, right. Oh, no,
It
I've
was
always
not one of my
liked that
favourites
song.
to begin with, but it's kind of it has weathered well.
Yeah.
No, House Clocks was wonderful on the 2006 tour. Oh, it's wonderful hearing that with you play that. So this was recorded in 2000.
Mm-hmm.
So then it was a 4.5 year gap to when A Beach Full of Shells was recorded, which, to my view anyway, became a very autobiographical album.
Well, of that 4.5 year gap, you've got to remember there was 3 years of that were taken up with the aftermath of the collapse of the record company that
That's
had
right.
commissioned the Wine album.
Miramar.
Yeah, they went bankrupt, as you know, and they went bankrupt owning my catalogue. So there was, it took about 3 years to extract everything from that. But once we got past that, then we went in and had a crack at.
Yeah, this one happened fairly quickly.
Yeah, I think this one did. Beach Full of Shells did happen pretty quickly.
Yeah.
This is an album that people, a very high percentage of people that know you very well, really, really do love A Beach Full of Shells.
Oh, me
You
too. It's good.
How did that come about? Because people do really love it. Can you just try and explain?
yeah, it's one of my favourite 5, I think, that I've done. I mean, it's.
Well, you know, it's my third favourite. I think
Yeah.
it's fantastic.
It's also the interesting thing about this is that I've been doing lots of co-writes. Probably, what was the last album I wrote all on my own? Probably it was Past, Present, and Future, and then this. There were, like I did all those things with Peter White and Peter Wood, and and there were just sort of co-writes all over the place. And I suppose I was looking to insinuate other people's musical ideas into my songs to give them another dimension. For example, Peter White is very good at certain things that I would never think of, like Running Man. I would never think of these South American rhythms. I would never think of the groove things that he does. So I sort of went off for a while, and then when I did this record, I thought, well, I'll just make an Al Stewart record, which is I will write all the songs and all the lyrics, and it'll be just an expression of me rather than an expression of me channeling Peter White's ideas and writing lyrics to them. So in many ways, this is the successor to Past, Present, and Future, which is probably my favourite record that I've done. And apart from that, it's just I just look for the usual obscure historical material. I mean, I always liked Edward Lear. I thought it'd be nice to have a song about him. Because the centerpiece is this long song about somewhere in England, 1915, that has Rupert Brooke in it and Violet Asquith and all these people.
That's transformed the first time we came around to your studio with Chapman
Mm-hmm.
and I heard that song played with your electric guitar at the end, which just takes off.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. It really transformed that song. It's a wonderful song anyway, but it's
I mean,
very
the
appropriate.
thing I loved about this song, and always did when we came to recording it, is that when Lawrence plays the solo first, plays the solo at the end of it, the solo is over completely different chords from the song itself. So it becomes a separate section. I mean, if we'd have just played the solo over the chords of the song, it wouldn't have been the same. And the chords that the solo is over are really interesting and evocative, but they have nothing to do with the song. You know? So I thought that was a neat move.
Mm.
And a lot of these songs really did come alive in a different way to how they were on the record when you played them live in 2000. Like Gina was one. I'd seen Gina played for about 6 months before, but Gina with an electric guitar. I mean, it's just
Well,
you need it. I mean, it's fantastic.
Yeah, it is a pop song. I mean, it's sort of a rock song in a way.
It's like Carol, isn't it? It's always reminded me of
Yeah,
Carol.
it's one of those things. And there are things that are very... I mean, there are things that I may play forever, you know, like Catherine of Oregon, that are very simple, but they're very pretty and they're evocative. And when you start a song with a line, you know, when I get even more old than I am now, you can sing that one forever because every time you sing it, you're a little bit older, you know. But I like some of the more obscure things. I always like Beacon Street. You know, it's just it has the way it goes from major to minor is. I think I was probably channeling things we said today about the Beatles in a way. Like that this sort of move from maybe it wasn't that. Maybe it was but I'll be back again. Yeah, it's probably that that I was thinking of. It keeps going from the major to the minor all the time.
Lenonian.
What?
Lenonian.
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 My goodness, Lenonian. I have Lenonian linoleum.
Yeah, this was the first record that was done all digital, because the previous two were still recorded on 2-inch tape. So the process of doing this was a lot easier, especially when we have the original 13-minute version of Class of 58.
Yeah.
Because that took a lot of manipulating, because there was a lot of sections, and then being able to scale it down to the 4-minute version was. It wasn't that easy, but it was a lot easier than it would have been if we were cutting tape.
I was going to ask you how technology has changed the way that you've recorded the albums.
It hasn't changed the basic procedure. It's just made things somewhat easier and somewhat more budget friendly too, because the last two albums we mixed in my studio, whereas before that we had to go into kind of a mix room, because we were running off tape and we needed lots of boxes with flashing lights and, you know, a console with faders. And
Al tells me you can record a double album in an afternoon for 2 and 11 pence nowadays.
2 and 11 pence, yeah.
Yeah.
3 guineas.
3 guineas.
Okay, well, that's wonderful. What I want to do is just... Oh, there you go.
That's
That's fine.
fine. Yeah, just pause it for a
Yeah,
while.
I'll just step out.
Stewart G on the left hand side.
I'll just get a break. Right, well, Lawrence and Al, I hear you've made a new record.
Yes, we've made a new record. Here it is.
Do you want to go through the tracks one by one? Anything that springs to mind?
Sure. Yeah, what is the first track?
Lord Salisbury.
Oh, Lord Salisbury
Bob's your
said
uncle.
to me. Bob's your uncle. Yeah, the great thing about Lord Salisbury, the album to me is about certainty and uncertainty and how how you go from one to the other. And why not start with the most certain man in the universe? I mean, Lord Salisbury was the absolute epitome of the aristocrat, I would say. His government in 1895 was probably the last truly great aristocratic government of Great Britain. And for a man who is so sure of himself and so certain of everything that he did, and so calm in everything that he did, it's astonishing to me. It's an amazing thing that everything that he believed in was washed away utterly and completely and forever within one generation. When Queen Victoria died and Lord Salisbury resigned, that was it. I mean, that was it for an entire way of life, for an entire way of governing Britain that had existed for centuries. You know, when he went, I mean, first of all he passed the government on to his nephew Arthur Balfour, And because Lord Salisbury's real name was Robert Cecil, the wags of the days decided to imply this nepotism with the phrase "Bob's your uncle," because he was his uncle. But when Balfour was replaced after the Khaki election in 1906, I hope I got the history right, that basically was the end of the Conservative Party for quite a long time, and it ushered in a completely different way of doing business. The unions became much stronger. The labor movement, was created, and the anarchist movement was breaking out all over Europe. And then, of course, it was all, 1914, 1918 war that swept away, much of the way that the ruling classes had operated for centuries. And we haven't really seen the return of a Salisbury-style government, which is to say 20 people running the entire country, or 100 families, sort of basically running the world, as it was back then.
I thinking it was a good tune.
I think isn't it? It's in our list of Coolie People. It's one of the songs that you picked out that you particularly liked.
Well, I particularly like this one just because it's very, very much to the point from the get-go. It's like you get sucked into this.
It is what it is. Yeah, I mean, musically it is what it is, and then lyrically it's got all these little flourishes. It's a series of images, I think, from the time, like the iron wheels on a cobbled muse. Now, I wasn't around to hear iron wheels on a cobbled muse, but I know exactly what I mean, and it summons up an immediate image to me, or Oscar Wilde in the prison cell, or all these little things that come into the song that add to the flavour of the time. The fog-bound ship in the icy bay. I mean, to me that's 1895, and I'm there. You know what I mean?
I think that's true of the whole album. Is that it's very, very, very lyrical.
Yeah, this is very lyrical, and I spend a lot of time on these silly lyrics, so I hope they're okay.
What's next?
Next is Charles' view of the Eisenhower years.
Yeah, Eisenhower. Well, Eisenhower's undergoing a period of reassessment at the moment. I mean, people always thought that he was half asleep and played golf all the time. And the particular knock on Eisenhower was that he was not as good at national security as he should have been. And in fact, actually, Eisenhower knew a lot of things that he actually couldn't tell the public because he didn't want the Russians to know that he knew. But he was much more on the ball than people think. And I think there will be a reassessment of the Eisenhower presidency when people write books about him in the future. He wasn't the sort of bumbling old fool that people made him out to be.
Jimmy Jones?
Jimmy Jones comes up in the end of the song. Jimmy Jones was an American singer who had a couple of classic records, Handyman, that got covered by a lot of people, James Taylor, I think. And the even bigger hit in Britain was Good Timing. And so right at the end of the song, that happened right at the end of the Eisenhower presidency, Jimmy Jones released Good Timing. And I said, Jimmy Jones and I, we've both got good timing to be born into a greased-back world, all hips and teenage sneers. And no one, so I played the song to live so far, has known who Jimmy Jones is. They think it's a random reference, but of course it isn't. It's a reference to...
Nothing random about it.
Nothing random about it.
Well, when you play in England, maybe Johnny will come round and...
Johnny gets it. I mean, he's the only one who does get it, It's interesting. I thought everybody knew who Jimmy Jones is. They probably think it's a reference to Jim Jones and Guyana.
And that's one of the songs that you played live at McCabe's, of course, back in February.
Yes, we did.
Yep, you played
Now Al came over and one day and said, I wrote this in the shower.
I did. That's right. I forgot all about it. I did. I was in the shower and I suddenly had this idea for the Eisenhower years, and I just I could hear this phrase as a child's view of the Eisenhower years, and it was really annoying because as soon as I got that phrase, I started to think of lyrics. And I was in the shower, I couldn't write them down. And what happens is that...
You need one of those waterproof pad things.
When when it starts flowing, it comes in a torrent, you can't stop it.
And that's the shower.
So I'd written the first verse and was halfway through the second verse in my mind before I'd even got out of the shower. And the problem with that is that by the time I'd written the second verse in my mind, I'd forgotten the first verse. So it was just a question of rushing out, dripping wet, and writing it all down before I forgot it. And it looked so good on paper that I called up Lawrence and said, here, I've written a new song. And he said, oh, you better come down round and record it. So we had, from the inception of this thing in the shower, 10 o'clock in the morning, by the same afternoon, we had a finished version of it.
Yeah, and again, very little different from the finished record.
Yeah.
It's the joy of having you two living in the same town, isn't it?
It makes it a lot easier.
Yeah.
The Ear of the Night.
Military hair.
It was a piano piece. I mean, it was sort of loosely based on Angie.
Which became a guitar piece.
Well, yeah.
It was a piano piece that became a
guitar piece. I said to Lawrence, "Could you play this on the guitar?" And he said, "Sure." Whatever, and that was there. It was.
Yeah, I actually tried to get him to write more song for it, because it's kind of a song sandwich. There's instrumental and then there's
Song
a song.
sandwich.
And then there's more instrumental. And he was, but the thing about this record, and it was true, and from a producer's point of view, and it was true especially with this, was that I really wanted Al to set the direction for it. So, I kind of stood back a lot of the time and let him dictate things.
More than you have? Is that what you're saying?
A little bit more.
Right.
A little bit more.
Did you realise that, Al?
No, I was just sort of writing songs.
Which was my job, is to make sure it's just to let him do what he wants to do.
I was just knee deep in lyrics. I did more lyrical rewrites on this record than any other one that we've done. I mean, there are songs on this new album that I actually wrote not one, not two, not three, but 4 separate sets of lyrics, all on entirely different subjects. I mean, for example, Elvis at the Wheel went through 4 different incarnations, and so did Silver Cattle. And every time I'd come around to Lawrence's, I'd have rewritten it into something else, and it was never quite there. I mean, there were some that were kind of close to it, and they were sort of okay, but they weren't it, you know what I mean? And then you get the final one, and you go, okay, that's it, that's what I'm aiming for.
Well, especially because when it's right, there's always this sense, well, this was an inspired choice.
Elvis at the Wheel at one point was all set on Hampstead Heath. I had the Everyman cinema in it. You remember?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It seems ridiculous now.
Yeah.
The next track.
Okay, Hanno the Navigator.
The Carthaginian, first man to sail down the coast of Africa, 450 BC or thereabouts, we think. Not sure how far he got in Senegal, maybe. I don't know, Hanno the Navigator. The thing that knocked me out was I was in the local bookstore, the one that closed, and they had 300 books on Romans and none on Carthaginians, and it just immediately rang this bell in my head. History is written by the winners. Absolutely it is. I mean, when the Carthaginians got wiped off the face of the map by Scipio Aemilianus, that was it. I mean, you can't find many Carthaginian histories where you can find unending Roman ones, and I thought, supporting the underdog and all that, I'd write a Carthaginian song, because it's a subject which is not much written about in pop. I don't know why.
And Albert Hammond was our guest Carthaginian.
Albert was a guest Carthaginian, and he came and he said, "Sing like a Carthaginian." Oh, all right, Water.
Well, that's how they used to sing.
Yes, that's it.
Back in the day. What's a wonderful song?
Shah of Shahs.
Shah of Shahs.
Perfect Dream.
Shah of Shahs came from a book by Ryszard Kapuscinski of the same name, and pretty much what happened was I read the book, and I think within about an hour of putting the book down, I'd written this song. I took big chunks of the ideas from the book. But what made Shah of Shahs interesting to me was the second chord change. It's like a da da da. It's actually the first chord change. It's
like Tommy the Tuba thing.
Second chord of the song, and it was a mistake. Lawrence will know what I mean. It begins in D minor, and I meant to go da 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 and play the chord of A minor, but I played the chord of A minor because I put my hand in the wrong place, one note up right across, and it created a chord that I absolutely hadn't meant to play. But as soon as I heard it, I knew it was exactly what I wanted. To be honest, I still don't know what the chord is, but it was a mistake. It was like I tried to play one chord, ended up playing another chord, and liked it better. So
I think it's like a B minor 7 flat.
It's something
5
like that. Yeah.
But what it does is it kind of you think you're in one place, but it shifts you. And the song and it sets up the song nicely, because it's a song about dissolution, I guess, the dissolution of the old regime.
Yeah, it's mostly just a song about him being wrong. I mean, he had a vision, he had this perfect dream, and the poor long-suffering Iranian people who went through 2 different shahs, neither of whom sort of were very easy to live under. to say the least, and Sarlacc and all the rest of it. And then they get this unsmiling despot, as a replacement, and we're still living through the consequences of that. The phrase, they take 100,000 pictures and in none of them smile about the Ayatollah Khomeini. I've realized subsequently that I got that from David Brinkley, of all people. Brinkley had a late night, a news show, an evening news show with, I think, John Chancellor. And they used to read the news, and occasionally they would exchange, sort of comments with each other. And Brinkley was very dry and rather witty. And they're talking about the Shah, and Chancellor, says what happened that day, about, the overthrow of the Shah and the Ayatollah, and there are all these pictures of the Ayatollah. And Brinkley just pipes up out of nowhere, and he says, yes, there must be thousands of pictures of him. And he says, has anyone ever seen him smile? And I can still remember Brinkley saying that, and that must have gone into some, sort of recess of my mind, and I dragged it out and stuck it into the song.
And that song's got this string quartet featured.
There's string quartet, and there's cello, there's solo cello.
There's Hope playing on that one.
Hope Easton playing that,
It's a wonderful song. Next.
Angry Bird.
Well, yes.
Well, no one likes that song, so what's the next one after that?
Well, Angry Bird underwent a rewrite of rewrites. I mean, it's just, it was called Long Time Gone, and it was a sort of...
very dark, kind of
dark
song.
Oh, yeah.
Western.
Gonna kill your wife and gonna kill your kids. It was about an escaped convict who had been serving time for something that someone else had done, and he was out for vengeance. And the song is perfectly good as a Johnny Cash or Waylon Jennings song, but it just didn't suit my persona or voice at all. I mean, it's like, I don't know why I wrote it. I wrote it in a hotel room on a pad of hotel paper. And it was, again, one of these things. I think I got out of the shower and there was a pen lying around the pad of paper, and I wrote the whole thing out and sang it that evening.
You sang in Ramsey, you did?
Yeah.
You sang it that evening.
And it was like, people sort of liked the tune, but God, this is dark, like it's sort of, guns and knives and skullduggery. And at some point along the line, I just cleared my mind completely and thought, okay, this has got to go somewhere else. And I took it off in the sort of Edward Lear direction. I turned the main character into a bird, and the bird is, it knows it's a bird, but it forgets. Because radical penguins whisper in its ear.
Well, it's fallen in with them, hasn't it?
The radical penguins say essentially, man, flying is awfully bourgeois. I mean, if you want to be one of the people, man, you're supposed to walk. So the bird, because it's stupid, it decides that flying is bourgeois and it'll walk everywhere. But of course, when a bird tries to walk everywhere, it goes very slowly and it doesn't get anywhere in a hurry. And so the bird is very dissatisfied with walking, even though flying is bourgeois and it knows it can't do it. And then it starts to go slightly mad and it joins the avian fringe and it becomes a revolutionary and thinks it's Che Guevara. And it's all highly unsatisfactory because what it really is a bird, and birds are meant to fly. But as the song progresses, the bird will do everything except to its true nature, and it will do everything except to fly. And there are lots of people, it seems to me, in the world who dig ever deeper holes by not being who they are, and by like sort of thinking. Someone says to them, "Oh, yeah, man, it's too bourgeois," and then they start digging a hole, and they keep going until they get to Australia, and that's what the bird did.
It's got the line, wings are so passé.
Yes.
And it was a terrible thing to say after all that.
It is a metaphor, yeah. I mean, it's like I can see these radical penguins telling this stupid bird that wings are passé.
Well, again, it's a very, very clear image.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of very, very visual elements.
It's Carolian rather than Lannonian.
And it's a wonderful song live.
Yeah.
It completely breaks up the set when you put that in it.
Well, because it's up-tempo, it's a zingy thing.
So The Loneliest Place on the Map.
Oh, you talk about that one.
It's maybe my favourite song on the record.
Well, it's just got this really kind of, this kind of dark, kind of remote, kind of cinematic quality to it. And it's certainly one of my favourites because it just has this, it just takes you to a place. And it really didn't turn out the way I expected it to, because I wasn't sure about it in its original form as four-leaf clover, but
right.
Until Al came in with this lyric. But then when I put the strings on it, I thought, well, this is kind of cool. This has a different kind of vibe to it. And the music and the lyrics seem to match up very nicely because it's kind of, again, it's another metaphor.
Yeah, it is. Of course, it's sort of out in the snow part too. But of course, this place exists. It's, I can't pronounce it, Kerguelen Island. You know, who knows how you pronounce that? It's a French little weather station in the southern Indian Ocean. It's the furthest outside of the Arctic and Antarctic circles that it's humanly possible to get from any form of civilization. This island, probably on the 50th southern parallel, is over 2,000 miles from anything, and I mean anything, in any direction. I mean, the closest place is Madagascar, which is 2,000 miles away, or Australia, which is almost 3,000 miles away. And if you look at Kerguelen Island on a map, I mean, it's unthinkable that you could be that far from everything. Imagine if you lived in, say, Dublin, and your nearest neighbour was in New York City.
Yeah.
I mean, can you conceive of that? Because that's what it's like if you lived there. And just because I have a big thing about maps, and I have usually when I can't think of when I'm not inspired for a song, if I open an atlas of the world at random at any page, there's a song sitting in front of me, and so it was with this.
And it's a place that you've known for a long time because you wrote an instrumental called
When I was a
back in
teenager.
'62.
I've always been fascinated by it because it's as far as it's possible to get away from all other human beings on the planet, you know, outside of the polar regions. So it's no ships go there. It's not on a shipping route. It's not you can't get there unless you make a real concerted effort, you know, to physically go there. And when you do get there, you have, as I say, seagulls and ice and desolation in all directions. There's a wonderful shot from a satellite in space and through a broken cloud bank looking at this thing, and it almost makes me nauseous almost looking at it because it is so remote and so unearthly. It's almost like it comes from another planet. There's something very powerful about the pull of Kerguelen Island, and I don't quite know what it is. So they probably should have sent Napoleon there.
It's a very powerful song. I love the sonic element of that song. It's a wonderful product. It's
And
really,
one
really
of Lawrence's
strong
best
song.
guitar solos.
Oh, thank you.
Overall, that's a fantastic song.
Sleepwalking.
Sleepwalking.
It's a
Sleepwalking.
tale.
Sleepwalking was originally a song about the, it was a very grim song, about the Katyn massacres, which happened in World War II, late 1940.
Oh, about the forest?
Katyn Forest.
Oh, yes.
It was...
and the town that keeps changing position or whatever.
The Russians killed about 17,000 people, 11,000 of which were Polish officers, and the others were like government officials of one sort or another, and buried them in Katyn Forest. But being Russians, they blamed it on the Germans. The Germans were furious. I mean, it's not that the German army wasn't like killing, sort of loads of people and burying them in woods, but they didn't do this one. It's almost like, they're very bad boys and they've done all this terrible stuff, and they get blamed for something they didn't do, and righteous anger had nothing to do with it. The German, in the middle of a war, the German army was trying to fly British journalists to Katyn Forest to explain that they hadn't done this. And this is during wartime, unheard of. I mean, it's just, they went to every length imaginable to say that they hadn't done
And
it.
the song isn't about any of it.
And my song is about absolutely none of it, because the deeper I got into the Katyn thing, the deeper I realized that its origins lay probably back in World War One. Probably went all the way back to Lord Curzon, but that's a digression that I can't make here. What the song did end up being about was an international con man who sort of was good looking and passed himself off as being rich and very upper class, and got accepted into New York society. And as I said, bankers liked his company, and they always let him in. And he does all the right things, says all the right things, makes all the right noises, and takes everyone's money. And at the end of the song, I conclude that it's a public service that he's performing.
Was that one of the more recent songs that went on the album?
Yeah, when we do Sleepwalking.
It's kind of in the middle. Isn't it?
That is interesting too, because that was another thing that was a piano thing, and we started playing around with acoustic guitars, and I never thought that should be in modal D, and Lawrence said, DAGAD. Lawrence suddenly said this should be in DAGAD, and I didn't get it at all. I thought that's not going to work, I can show him Bigor, he did it in DAGAD.
So So it's got this kind of folk picking
Yeah,
thing,
yeah,
it has.
but fretless bass, and it's good. And the organ's kind of cool.
The organ's very creepy.
Yeah. Football Hero. Well, that was fun because we had been talking about Al doing
Talk
this
about song and talk about how the ending came about as well.
Well, we were going to do it with just Al and the guitar. In fact, we talked about you doing it live.
Yeah.
And because it's a good story song, and you didn't really need dressing up. But when we were on the session, and I kind of handed out a chord chart, and I said, let's just kind of see what happens. And without really any planning, we just launched into this kind of Al Green soul groove on the song, and it fit great. And when we got to the end, when he finishes singing, we just kept playing. So there's this kind of long coda.
It's great the way that it doesn't keep
solo,
playing for like 15 seconds or so. It keeps playing for 2 or 3 minutes, doesn't it?
Exactly. Yeah, well, because Jim Cox, who's just such a great keyboard player, was sitting at the B3 just kind of going for it, and we just kept going,
Yeah, it was one of those things where the band knew the take was over and they'd finished the take, and they just went into a jam session. I'm sure that no one thought that we were going to keep this and put it on the record, but when we played it back, we thought this was great.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Spontaneous.
Yeah.
Elvis at the wheel.
Oh, well,
Mr. Stalin.
People are going to think, because I have a habit of putting Joseph Stalin into songs, that this is another one that I've invented. But this happened, according to Peter Guralnick, in his classic Elvis Presley biography, that Elvis was in fact at the wheel driving through Arizona when he looks up in the sky, and lo and behold, there's a cloud in the shape of the face of Joseph Stalin. You'd think I would make this up, but no. And so Elvis undergoes a religious transformation, and he starts telling people he wants to become a monk. He starts hanging out with his hairdresser in the bathroom for 3 hours at a time, talking about God. And worries the hell out of Colonel Tom Parker. My boy wants to become a monk. What's this nonsense? The Memphis Mafia hated all this phase of Elvis. They just wanted to go back to sort of the clubhouse boys club thing they were doing. Eventually Elvis kind of grew out of it, but it all came about because of this cloud that looked like Stalin. This song went through 4 rewrites. It originally was about Queen Dido of Carthage, because I was thinking of a Carthaginian suite. I'd already got Hanno, and I thought if I could put Dido in there and then maybe some Romans to finish them off, then I'd have a little Carthaginian suite. But it went from Dido to being, as I said, then it moved to Hampstead Heath in London, and it was about being in a rainstorm on Hampstead Heath and taking shelter in the underground station by the Everyman Theatre. And that didn't seem to go anywhere, so then it became, I don't know what it became something else entirely, and finally, out of desperation, I remembered this story about Elvis Presley, and I thought, well, it can be Elvis at the Wheel. I must say that the title Elvis at the Wheel was in fact Hope.
Yeah, my wife Hope. Because we were
didn't know what
searching
to
for a
call
title, and she said, "Let's call it Elvis at the Wheel."
So we did.
And she thanks you for that.
Well, no, we thank her. We gave us a title.
Yeah, Silver Kettle.
4-leaf clover, originally.
No, Silver Kettle
was always Silver Kettle.
Although those are the only words that remain.
Yes.
It was.
Sorry. Sorry. Let's start that again. Sorry, that's just my fault.
Yeah, Silver Kettle was always Silver Kettle, but again, it went through lots of rewrites. This was not one that went through radical rewrites, because right at the beginning, I had the idea of being in the car, and the thing that might have influenced it in mood, not musically, but as the mood was Good Morning by the Beatles, where he had nothing to do, so if you we'd go downtown, and it was this sort of restless feeling of sort of being out there in the modern world and sort of not relating to it in a way, but yet sort of almost enjoying not relating to it. Almost just sort of saying, well, I'm part of this, I don't understand it, but I'm here, so I'll groove along with it. And I knew I wanted that, but it was how to say it in the most effective terms. And so all the rewrites were unlike the rewrites on Elvis at the Wheel. I wasn't going off at a tangent. I was just trying to get closer and closer to what I was trying to get at. And the 4th rewrite proved to be the charm. Once I got the the towers of glass that petroleum had made, and once I got, like all these images, that they all added up to what the song is. It's one of my favorites, actually, on the record.
Yeah.
And that's a decade one.
That's a decade one.
Doing a kind
Except
of
I played that one.
Yeah, strummy, like a strummy, drony kind of decade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's got some chords in that. I don't know what I was doing really, but they work.
Yeah. Like William McKinley.
Which is the last one.
One
Well,
of my favorites.
as everyone knows, William McKinley was an American president. And he ran a campaign in 1896 against William Jennings Bryan. And what everybody did at the time was they got a little train and they went from town to town, and the presidential candidates would make speeches from the caboose, your favorite word. And McKinley wasn't having any of that. He said, I don't want to do this. I want to... he said, I'm going to stay home. I'm going to sit on my front porch and I'm going to make everybody come to me. And so he did. And it worked out very well. He won the 1896 presidential election, because it did him no good whatsoever, because he was assassinated in 1901. But my idea was that, in the song I have a breakup with a girlfriend, and instead of chasing her around the world, making impassioned oratory at her, I will sit on my porch like William McKinley and wait until she comes back. If she doesn't come back, so be it. So it was a really, really simple folky thing. And fascinatingly, Lawrence, I don't know what I was doing, but Lawrence decided that he would play the strumming guitar on that one, which you would think I was doing, but it wasn't. It was Lawrence. And he started playing it very musically, as he's wont to do. And I said, no, you don't get it. I said, what we want, I want you to sound like a really bad folk guitar player who's maybe just been playing for 6 months, and just sort of like, do these strummy sounds and make it sort of, and plus, on top of that, find the worst guitar that you have, because he's got about 30 guitars. I want you to find the oldest and worst and most beat-up guitar.
And did he do this?
And play it like Bob Dylan on and off.
Yeah, well, actually, I started off, because I have these signature Martin guitars that are really like superior.
It all sounded too good.
Yeah, so I pulled out, I have a 1964 Gibson J160E, which is like a John Lennon guitar, like from early Beatles era, which is kind of roughly in the ballpark of those early Dylan records.
Exactly.
Because he was playing a Gibson too.
Yeah.
So I used that and just, did a kind of a one-take strummy kind of thing with it. And then what I love about the arrangement on that is the way it builds, because it starts off with just one guitar and voice with a little harmonica, and it ends up, I really wanted to put a choir on it, but we kind of ran out of time and money to do that.
On William McKinley? Wow.
But it gets big,
Yeah, it gets bigger as it goes
It gets
along.
bigger and bigger as it goes along, and it's like, because it's just the image of the whole world kind of coming
Yeah.
to him.
The imagery, and it's a very appropriate song to end the album, I think, the way that the
Yes,
song
and
it seems
as
just
I wrote
right.
it-
So,
As soon as I wrote it, I thought that's the last track on the record.
It occurs to me, you start off with the English leadership, and then you end up with the American leadership from
Yes,
the late
and
19th
not only
century.
that, but in the same year, the album
Yeah.
begins and ends in 1896. So, and which I hadn't, planned upon. It just happened by coincidence.
and I hadn't realised till you said just now about it's so Al. I was just calling it soul.
Yeah, well, it's sparks of ancient light. Take the first letter of each word, and you get so out. And it is really. Because there are a lot of these. I think you would probably, and I don't know this. I can't swear to this, but there must be 50,000 people out there making music and making records. And if you can find another one who's just written a song about Lord Salisbury, I would be very impressed.